Michael Thurwell. I am a sociologist and photojournalist right here at VEDACOM.com, VEDA World News. That is VEDACOM with 2M's.com, VEDACOMM.com. And I'm here today with Nicholas Little.
Yes, sir.
Sir, introduce yourself to the people.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nicholas Little. I live here in Houston, originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a community advocate. I serve here in Houston on the NAACP Executive Committee. Also, I work in federal law enforcement, and I'm just very involved, trying to make sure my involvement is impactful in our great community.
Okay, and there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about here. We got a lot to unpack. We have redistricting. We have law enforcement. We have the NAACP and everything that you guys are doing. And you just brought to my attention today that attorneys are getting together to do what, sir?
So I know for the NAACP, our legal redress and our attorneys are working to start a lawsuit, or they are beginning a lawsuit. And what they're asking for is people that live in the districts that are that are conflicted with this redistricting for them to sign up as plaintiffs, so they can come and testify and be a part of that lawsuit, so we can make sure that our voices are heard, because we realize that the political system has been fixed to where we can't use our voice there. So we have to do the old school way, and we have to take it to the courts.
Okay, now let me ask you, when it comes to redistricting, who is affected, what is affected, and how does it affect everyone?
So I guess you have to understand first where redistricting came from. Okay. So redistricting is only supposed to occur every 10 years, which means after the census. The purpose of redistricting is to make sure that resources and representation is properly allocated based upon the population. Okay. It's not supposed to be for anything that's political or racially biased or anything like that. So what we are now is it's being dressed up as redistricting, but what it really is gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is whenever a group or organization or a political party that may have a majority is trying to ensure that they stay in power, or in a power lock as long as they can. So out of the normal tenure or time in which they would have a census, they decided, hey, we're going to take and redraw the maps. Okay. And we're going to redraw the maps to where we can segue people from different areas to alter the vote, or, as some of the maps look like right now, force people who are normally in two districts to run against each other, so that it'll be a cancel out process. Like right now, the way the maps are written and drawn, it looks like everyone is running right now for the 18th congressional district would also possibly run against Congressman Al Green in the 9th, which is what they tried to about 2 or 3 years ago. They tried to do that, and God rest her soul, the Honorable late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was like, not on my watch, and she sued, and they stopped. But now they're trying again to do this process, and looks like they're trying their best to try to push it through, even though we're giving it every fight.
Let me ask you, for those people out there who are watching the redistricting and the battle that's being taken place, what makes it racial?
So if you look at, first of all, let's start where this whole thing started. President Trump said that he wanted 5 more congressional seats in Texas. The purpose of 5 more congressional seats that he will want them for in Texas is to try to make sure that number one of those seats are Republican, so that they can maintain a slim majority in the House and in the Senate. So when that occurs, that means that party, or pretty much the party, will stay in power in the state, which means that all the policies and things that they're trying to push through, because you got to realize President Trump is old. You know, he served 2 terms after this term, so we need to look at who the next people are coming in, which right now he looks like he's supporting Vice President J.D. Vance as the person to be the nominee for president for the next election. But with all that happening, it really hurts. It hurts us as a whole, because what happens is it defeats the purpose of voting if the party is going to take an authoritarian position and just push their agenda through. And it's what's going on right now. So no matter what we're voting, and it discourages voting, because at the end of the day, I'm a VDVR, I'm a deputy voter registrar. How can I encourage people to vote? Your vote counts whenever they're watching right before our eyes that our elected officials, like right now, the governor's asked for a special session with the Supreme Court to remove State Representative Gene Wu from his position. Because they said he's the ringleader of what's going on right now.
Do you consider him to be a ringleader?
I do not. I personally feel like, and I know the state representative very well. And I feel like collectively, the caucus of Democrats are realizing that they have to take certain measures to try to do what they can to try to offset this, to make sure it's done fairly. You know, State Representative Ron Reynolds says it best. He said, sometimes it's necessary to have good trouble, and I'm sure he got that from Congressman John Lewis in that aspect, and stating that. And it's important. We're not trying to rustle feathers. We're not trying to piss people off. But at the same time, you have to look at this. This whole special session was called because of, unfortunately, the whole incident happening with the river and the flooding for those victims in the Hill Country. Okay. We've not heard anything else about the discussion about the victims of the Hill Country. Everything's been about this. So at the end of the day, what is this session really about? And now the people aren't looking at, but that's really what's happening. And that's what we're trying to get people to understand. You know, if this is really about what it's supposed to be, redistricting, we get it. But what about supporting those victims? What about supporting those people in those areas? Some of these areas are actually Republican areas. So you guys so bent on working on the agenda of the president and the governor that you're forgetting your own people that you work for? Because I think people who are elected forget that they work for the people, not for themselves. But
well, let me ask you here, because we're talking about flood victims, we're talking about the redistricting, and Gene Wu and the Democrats who actually, they're saying fled the state to go someplace to do something, right? And he issued an arrest warrant, or he was attempting, and when we say he, we're talking about Governor Abbott, Greg Abbott. Does he have the power or the strength to do such?
Personally, as a citizen and as someone who really studies especially constitutional law, I don't think so. You know, I could see if you try to say it was derelict of duty, or you know they're abandoning their posts, as we would say in the military. But at this point, let's not forget that even though they're representatives, as a private citizen, they have a right to a First Amendment to protest.
This is just true.
So we have to make sure we understand that, and what they're doing in protest, not only doing it for themselves, but actually doing it for us as well. Because, and that's what I was talking to someone about earlier today. I said it's getting to a point to where we can't always put everything on the back of our legislators. You know, with the situation we have right now, where they have they don't have a majority in either house, any chamber in the state legislature. It's up to us, the people, the community, the grassroots, the advocates, to come together and say, hey, enough is enough, and it's time for us to step up. And I want people to understand, you don't have to be an elected official, you don't have to be able to have a title to be impactful. Okay. I think some people are forgetting that, or feel like, oh, I'm not this, I'm not that. No, everybody's important, and everybody's special in their own way. Everyone has something to bring to the table.
This is also
and I need everybody to understand that, how important their impact is. And I want everybody really just to be engaged and pay attention, and just kind of take a break from the line dancing, and let's go line dance down here at the Capitol.
Let me ask you, in the case of Governor Greg Abbott, have you ever seen a top contender that was good enough to face off against him in any upcoming elections?
Personally, back, let's see, I think maybe a few years ago, I know there was an actor, Matthew McConaughey, from Texas. Yeah. He was they had talked about it a little bit, but in my opinion, at this point, I don't, because, and all I can say, I say from this aspect, from a non-political perspective, that you know, on the Democratic side, you know, the president has shoved so many executive orders and so many things down our throats, to it's almost put us in a state of chaos. So so it's like, as we try to regroup from one thing, here comes 3 more bills, or almost 3 more things coming down. So we haven't fully had the Democratic side hasn't fully had a chance to organize, because they've been in fight mode the entire time. Okay. Whereas Republicans, knowing that they hold the authority right now because of being elected in the majority, they're just pushing it through, and it's put us in a situation where, like, at this point, who would be able to be a strong contender for that particular seat? Because at the end of the day, something has to change. But the election's coming up soon. We have to make sure, and even the midterms, even with the elections coming up in 2026, the only way that we're really going to be able to change this narrative now, that we're fighting right now, we're dealing with, we have to flip some of these seats in this next election. And I hate to say it, but I haven't heard enough people on either side of the aisle talking about 2026. And
it's a tough one, because we're looking at that. We looked at the last presidential election, Democrats, Republicans, and one of the issues that a lot of people felt that Democrats encountered was the fact that a lot of Black American men went more towards the conservative side. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing that same trend here in Houston, in Texas alone?
I see it around the state. As far as Houston, I can't say I see that. Okay. I know a lot of other states I've traveled to, been to, especially this year. I've seen and I have conversations with people where there are some African American or Black men who are more hoping that because the president is more of a business mind, that you know that he can kind of do things that put more money in their pocket. But you know, at the same time, you have to also look at with the tariffs and with the economy. You know, when tariffs are passed down, people don't understand how tariffs work. When tariffs are passed down, right? You may not see it right now, but by Christmas, when you go in the store, you try to figure out why that thing used to be $20, it's now $65. Yeah. Then you're gonna realize, and it's gonna be too late, because you've been spending money thinking everything is good now. And then you get to that point and realize, man, like it's not, the money's not coming in fast enough. Or you pay later, right? And I think people are looking, especially Black men, are looking for something that's more strong as far as economic wise for themselves and their families. But you have to really research. A lot of people don't do their due diligence and research, you know, what these things are, what's going on. Even the Bible says, study to show thyself approval. And a lot of people just aren't doing it. They see TikTok, they see what's on Instagram, and with AI being so dominant now, you don't know what's real and what's not. So if you
This
see,
is also true.
yeah, so if you see somebody post a post like, yeah, President Trump says he's gonna do this, that, and the third, and you just say, man, and then you go tell this guy, yeah, man, President Trump says he's gonna do this, that, and the third, and word spread, but is that really what's happening? Or is that just a narrative just being created? But now we have a false narrative with all these people out here telling the story that's not gonna happen. And there's no bailout.
Well, let me ask you, what trends do you see from even the state, local, and federal level politically? What trends are you coming across or seeing or even predicting?
So one thing I will say, especially I did a lot of volunteering, a lot of service work with the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and I did a little bit also with the late Congressman Sylvester Turner. What I see a lot of is a lot of our strong leaders are going on to glory, and a lot of people have taken the time to train up the next generation.
Why do you think it is?
Well, for one, I feel like a lot of people in these offices, in these positions, they're not psychic. They don't predict that they're going to glory as soon in some circumstances. And I think some people just want to once they're there, they just want to be there forever. But at the end of the day, it's hurting our communities, because if people aren't being trained and people aren't being brought into the fold, my grandfather was told me when I was a kid that if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. Too many of our people are on the menu. Too many of our people are on the menu because the people that look like us that have the seats at the table aren't bringing us in.
Well, if that's the case, let me ask you, do you think there should be an age cap or a limit term cap?
I believe age cap, yes.
What would that age be?
I would say and I think it should be, honestly, general throughout the whole, from the federal. I feel like, especially at a representative level or at a senator level, I would say no more than 70 years old, 65 to 70. And I say that because, again, that's near retiring age. And at that age, that's when people start to lose a lot of their cognitive skills.
A lot of people are questioning Trump even now.
Right.
I heard that the talk, they were like, hey, man, when you get up there in age, you just start saying things that you typically wouldn't necessarily say had you been a little bit younger.
Right, and those leaders oftentimes, they may realize it and don't want to face the facts or face the music. Okay. Hey, this is happening. So that's why there has to be something put in place to say, hey, even though you may think you feel great, what you said on that house floor did not make sense, or it may hurt you, it may hurt your constituency. You didn't think that through, you didn't follow the script that your age wrote, things like that. So I think that it's important that we do that, and not only that, but also prepare their mindset also that you're training a successor.
Okay.
Because again, if there's no way that if you're not terming out, and all you're doing is keep getting reelected, why would I train somebody else? I tend to be here forever.
Understood. Well, let me ask you, the NAACP. What is your role within the NAACP?
So here in Houston, I'm the criminal justice chairman for the NAACP. Okay. And in that aspect, I investigate any type of inquiry or any type of complaints from the community when it comes to police brutality. Even with the jails, people complaining about how their significant other, their family or colleague has been treated while incarcerated in our department Texas TDC. Also, I work real close with law enforcement. I'm actually a member of APOL, the African American Police Officers League, and I work for other law enforcement agencies. I'm a member of BLEA. So working with them also, because being in my role, I think I brought a little bit of a change to it, because in the past, the criminal justice component has always dealt with mainly complaints against law enforcement. Okay. But there are many members of law enforcement who are actually good and do their job. So what about them? Or I got one case I'm dealing with now. What about when law enforcement is treated unfairly by their own department?
It happens more often than you think.
Right, and I look at it from both sides. And in my role, that's what I serve in. I don't just serve to fight against. I serve for everybody.
I will say this, and a point of personal privilege, and
yes,
I typically do not talk about myself.
Yes, sir.
Believe it or not, I was actually in the police academy.
Oh, wow.
Right there in Galveston College. Okay. I moved from Houston to go to Galveston, and here's what happened to me. I was admitted into the program. I did 5 out of 6 months there. There was a guy by the name of Dan Blackford, who was the master firearms instructor over at Galveston. What was that? College of Mainland. He pulls me into the office along with my director and the instructor from Galveston College. They look at me and say, "You're part of a black identity extremist movement," which I am not. I work every day. I don't have time for that.
Right.
My director looks at me and she says, I'm gonna give you two options. You can stay or I'm gonna put you out.
Mm.
If you fight this, I can make your life hard.
Wow.
Now, I know if it happened to me, it's probably happened to somebody else.
Of course.
What would you say to people who are facing things like that when it comes to law enforcement?
I would tell them, first of all, I would probably definitely reach out to the NAACP. I think there's one in Galveston as well. Reach out to your to NAACP, look for some type of legal redress or legal help with that, because a situation like that is just even in their role is totally unlawful and unconstitutional,
Okay.
and it violates your rights, not just as a citizen but also being there. You know, they have no right to even make that. You know, and
I would tell you, and I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
no, please,
It's
please.
very
because
rarely.
I have a similar story like that. When I first moved to Houston,
Really?
I got stopped by DPS.
Really?
And because I had a brown holster, they accused me of being a member of the Black Panther Party.
Get out of town.
And ran my background and all kind of stuff. And I'm over here asking them, say, what'd you pull me over for? And they say, you look like you fit the description someone was looking for. And I said, well, can you give me that description? And they said, well, he looks like you. I said, okay,
Oh,
but that's a
wow.
lot. That's a lot. So they said, well, can we search your car? And I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't care, whatever. So I had a holster, no gun in it, just a holster in my back seat, under the seat. And he said, hey, we found this. Hey, are you a member of the Black Panther Party? And I just looked at him. I said, no, but I'm a member of the NAACP in 3 different states. If that helps. And he was like, we'll be back. So they ran my information and stuff. Called a supervisor.
Really?
Yeah, these were plainclothes DPS officers. Called a supervisor. Like they really was trying to like say I did something or I was part of something or like that. And what it was off at Ella Boulevard on the north side. They said, well, not too long ago we had a trooper killed out here. And they tried to explain the situation. I said, okay, so you're profiling me because of an incident that happened. I said, I just moved here. I said, I just moved here 3 months ago from Charlotte, North Carolina. I said, you can verify. I said, call the police chief there. They called a police chief there, and they're like, yeah. They said, well, what's the problem? He said, he's an upstanding person, you know, what's the issue? And they're like, well, we think he's been involved. They said, well, how's he involved? He just moved there. So eventually, they let me go, but I reported to DPS.
How did that turn out?
So at first, they gave me a little pushback. So what they didn't realize is that even before I moved to Houston, I'd already began to get engaged with people. So I contacted the district attorney's office, and I contacted someone on the inside that I connect there, and I said, hey, this is what happened, blah, 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 this, that, the third. So they reached out, then they connected me with the police chief at that time, and I talked to the police chief about it, and he said, well, you need to do this, this, and this, you know, they have an ID, internal affairs. So I navigated around. Eventually, those officers got put on 8 months of death duty.
I'm going to tell you this, man, and I've neglected to tell you this because I didn't want to say anything. You have restored my faith in law enforcement. No, I mean that. I mean it. I'm going to tell you, you know, after that incident over at Galveston College, I just didn't have the faith. You know, when I look at a situation, someone such as myself or any other person,
Right.
because I used to work for the state, you're answering a call that only very few people actually will answer. You know what I'm saying? And when something like that happens, it becomes such a distraught thing for you. You look at that and you say, man, I don't know if I can trust these people.
It's traumatic.
It is. It was very traumatic.
Yeah, it's like another form of PTSD.
It is. I think about it every day. I'm not going to lie to you. But I just want to say thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes,
For
sir.
being upstanding, for just you being you. I didn't know who you were until we met that one day.
Yes,
Just
sir.
thank you, man. But transitioning, going back to the NAACP,
Yes.
you got the NAACP and you also have the Greg Abbott situation. What else is the NAACP doing within the community?
So we do legal redress committee, do different drives and stuff at least once a month, where people can come to our branch or come to a location and they can meet with attorneys and get like consultations. So we're not providing you with an attorney, but we can give you information about maybe who to contact, who to talk to. You know, so you see us, we give you information, give you advice, because these are actual attorneys that actually don't know, you know, from whether it be about your Social Security, whether it be criminal, whether it be vehicular, or whatever the situation may be, they can advise you about on the right course to take. Versus if you would have went on your own to a law firm or something, they're going to charge you like a $250 to almost $500 consultation fee.
Correct.
Just for their time. So we do that. Our housing chair, Ms. Belinda Everett, she does a really good job of making sure, because one thing in NAACP, just like the Urban League is about equity. You know, it's not enough to have equality if we don't have equity. So it's important that we're trying to get as many African Americans, particularly or minorities, to own a house, to have a house that they can call their own, you know, and build on that and keep it in the family and keep that going. Because what is happening now, you know, besides gerrymandering, especially what I've seen in Third Ward and Fifth Ward, we have a lot of gentrification.
We do.
That's a big issue. I've never seen gentrification move so fast as I have in Houston,
Why
Texas.
do you think that's happening?
Well, a lot of it I feel comes from, you know, for instance, you know, a family grew up in Third Ward, you know, and over time the kids grew up, had kids, moved on somewhere, the grandkids don't want to come out to that area. They go to college, stay where they are in college out of town, or go build their families elsewhere. You know, whoever owned a house, or the grandmother or someone passed away, well, the house just sitting there. So no one pays the taxes, so the state may take it, or the county may take it, you know, or things like that. And then people just, somebody just comes and swoops it up, and they said, what used to be just a little small 2-bedroom house is now a 3-story house. And now the equity of that house makes everybody else's taxes and everything go up, and people eventually can't afford it. So they start moving, or they start selling their house, and then they sell that whole area.
So what do you see as far, like, Third Ward, Fifth Ward? Where do you see that neighborhood going?
I see, as I'm seeing right now, I see the neighborhood, like I said, gentrification is real.
It is.
It's happening, you know, and I live in Fourth Ward. I live 1 block from Freemanstown.
Okay.
So I've even seen it there, but I take walks sometime in an area that was predominantly African American. You know, I remember Honorable Sylvester Turner was mayor, and people that, I'll be honest, that gentrified the area wanted the bricks taken up out the street that was put down by the slaves that established the area.
Really? So those bricks on that street
Were
were laid by the hands of African
free slaves after Juneteenth. Yes.
Really?
And they warned them up because, the road is bumpy, or this, that, and the third. I'm like, hell, so
That's historic.
But not only that, but half the roads in Houston are bumpy.
This is also just right around the corner
right,
here.
right. I'm like, so y'all making a point about bricks? Like,
Yeah.
Right. But he did something to protect and preserve it to where it cannot be destroyed. But, you know, it's a real thing. And I see those areas pushing more and more people into the feeders, into the outer areas, instead of the communities that they were once there. And, you know, like even with Third Ward, yes, we have that. There's a McGregor. They have the HEB, but look how long it took to get a HEB there. There's still people that can't get there. There's still food deserts out here.
I was speaking with a prior guest, Holly Cotton.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta meet her. I'm gonna tell her about you.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about these food deserts within Houston. Now Houston is what, 600 square miles?
671 square miles.
There we go, almost 700 square miles, and it's still expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we dealing with food deserts in 2025?
Well, you know, again, we have to look at the narrative. You know, the reason why they're stored, and this is just my opinion, I'm not going to say it's fact, but the reason why in Third Ward or McGregor, why that HEB got there, in my opinion, it's because of gentrification. Because the people that were moving in say, hey, we got to travel all the way to downtown or Pearland just to go to a grocery store. Versus where I live on Webster Street in Midtown, if I go up 1-2 blocks, I got a Randall's. If I go down 3 blocks, I got a Kroger that looks like freaking a Trump Palace or something down there over on Gray Street. So I mean, I got a 24-hour CVS on a block up, and I got a Walgreens down on the other corner. So it's that you have to look at where the communities are and what the access is. And now that the communities are being gentrified, those people that are coming to those communities want the access they have from where they come from. And in their mind, they're like, you know, we're helping your community, but that should have been in the first place.
Here's the question: gentrification occurs. The taxes go up, people have to move out, they gotta go somewhere. But this segues into the ordinance that, not Chicago, I'm sorry about that, the city of Houston has, where the homeless people now can no longer occupy parts of downtown during the hours of 7 a.m. to, I believe, 11, is it? Where are those people gonna go?
And that's interesting, and I have to say, I've actually been an intricate part of that process. Okay. I'm Councilmember Twila Carter, and I work for the Astros as well. Okay. So a lot of times, and I'm one of the parking supervisors. So up under that bridge, up under that overpass lot, they used to line up that whole area. So one day, I sent an email out, and I'm not taking credit for anything, but I have a good relationship with one of our former police chiefs. Now he's a Homeland Security Director for the city of Houston, Director Larry Satterwhite. Okay. Larry and I are both Navy vets, so we think very like-minded. Okay. So I was talking to Larry about it. He said, you know, Councilmember Carter's working on something. We'll get with Twila. So I got with her and talked about some things. So, and they've been really busy working on things, because the issue is, you know, me being on the ground, a lot of people may look in and say, oh man, they're pushing people off or pushing different places, or they're doing it because of the 2026 soccer tournament thing that's coming here, FIFA. But whenever I get off my golf cart and there's homeless people around the perimeter of a parking lot where people pay $60 to park in, and there's piles of feces, and there's needles and syringes, and there are kids walking through this area. You know, somebody get in their truck and there's a guy using the restroom, exposing himself in front of their family and their kids to use the restroom. You know, that we can't have that. So I think that what they're working on is good as far as trying to find placement, because they're not just shoveling them, picking them up, throwing them in here. They're not just going to put them in this big. They're actually putting them in places where they can actually be able to take care of themselves. They whenever they have any, even now the issue we have a lot of out there is we have a lot of churches, a lot of groups come out and do feedings out there.
But those groups were being ticketed or cited
because you have to notify the city. Because think about it this way: if I'm not giving out food, and someone homeless gets the food and they get sick or die, who's the low responsible?
I can understand that's a public health issue.
Right, and then you pass out all that food to multiple people, and then we got 10 people laying over here that went to sleep and they wake up in the morning, something's wrong. So we need to make sure that things are being properly inspected, things are being properly vetted.
And I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people, they were taking issue with it. They said, well, they're just feeding homeless people, but they never stopped to consider the possible public health implications.
Right, you give a homeless person a jug of milk, and they're not out, it's Texas heat, that milk's not gonna survive. And they're trying to drink that milk, they're gonna be sick.
Yeah.
You know, and then not only that, they're sick. That ties up emergency medical services have to come and pick them up and take them to the hospital and deal with that. And there's so many emergencies going on constantly across. So it's like if we can limit the amount of emergency issues, we can also make our emergency medical services and our staff, our police force more robust as far as dealing with actual other crimes or other issues.
Speaking of police, how can we get more Black American men interested into law enforcement?
Well, I think, you know, and I'll say this, as a young man, I had interactions with law enforcement that were always positive because I grew up in the Carolinas and I lived in South Carolina for a time. And
that is a different place.
Right, right. So, we can't forget that South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union, and to this day, they still have some of those thoughts.
Point of personal privilege here. I lived in Charlotte for some time, and you know it's not too far to the border. And I would tell you, man, you cross that border, man, you have a certain feeling that comes over you. It's almost like I gotta hurry up and make this U-turn. I need to get back.
Once you get to Valentine, you need to go back up.
Yeah, I got to hurry up and get back, man. What's going on where we have this deficit of Black American men who are not flocking to law enforcement, even though we need law enforcement officers?
Well, you have to look at the narrative also. You know, let's look at George Floyd. Okay. You know, let's not forget him. You know, God rest his soul. Let's look at the incident that happened with that. You know, you also want to look at the issue that happened with the 3 officers in Memphis that killed a young man as well, that beat him to death.
Okay.
So you have white officers who are, you know, that maybe, you know, they're doing things to harm people or killing people, and you know they're being held to par. You know, justice was served in that aspect, so they would say in that point. And then you have in Memphis where the officers beat the young Black man to death and killed him and got off.
Wow.
Got off. You know, so the narrative for law enforcement right now, especially what the president is saying, talking about, you know, immunity for law enforcement, is something that he's always pushed for because, you know, he's like, you know, I'm friends with law enforcement, we love the cops, blah, blah, blah. But at what point do you put parameters on immunity to where people are just out here thinking they wide earth? and to that point, you know,
qualified immunity has always been a thing. Right.
But to this point now with the rhetoric, you know, let's not forget, we're dealing with a president, administration who said that the January 6th insurrection was just people visiting the Capitol.
How did you view that?
Well, I was sitting there days after. So, as a support.
Share with us that situation. Like,
so,
how did you see that?
So, I mean, I'm just going to tell like it is. The Capitol Police, you know, were overwhelmed. They asked for extra support from the administration, from the Department of Defense, which is right down the street, and the president gave no directive to give any support. While former Mayor Rudolph Giuliani and Steve Bannon, different people are out here promoting these things, the president stood by, did nothing, and the incident occurred. And I feel like it is a slap in the face to any member of law enforcement, particularly the Capitol Police, that all these people were pardoned for what they did on that day, you know. But then prior to them doing that insurrection, and that's called what it is an insurrection. Okay. It was treason. It really was treason. They tried to interrupt the democratic process of our voting system and the process of the votes and announcing who the new president is going to be based upon it being pretty much ratified that it is what it is, set in stone. Okay. They even threatened to harm the Vice President Pence, you know, and the president did nothing because he said Mike didn't do what he told him to do. Mm-hmm. So at what point do we separate, you know, totalitarianism, and an authoritative government from a democracy? And the president at that time refused to do that. So to me, it's a slap in the face to this day for any member of the Capitol Police, any member of law enforcement to be able to support a person who would. So if that let's make it personal. What if that happened in Houston? When there was 60,000, I was on the front lines when 60,000 people took to the streets by City Hall to march about what happened with George Floyd.
60,000?
60,000 during COVID.
Wow.
I was standing beside at that time of Chief Art Aceveda.
Okay.
We were standing beside each other, and we was marching beside each other, and I had a good conversation with him about it. And you know, he his mindset, and there were things that he said. He said this affects everybody, not just people who are offended, but also law enforcement community as well.
Okay.
Because again, it tarnishes the opinion of law enforcement for someone to keep their knee on someone's neck for 8 minutes and 43 seconds,
That's a
while
long time.
while two other officers just stand by and watch because the person that's inflicting the harm is of senior, that has more tenure or time in service.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, I feel like all of them should have got the same sentence, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because they all contributed to George Floyd's death. But as far as African Americans or black men, I've even seen here in Houston where the people at the police academy of times or through training have find ways to disqualify African Americans.
How does that happen?
So easy. I had one situation where, you know, like if you apply for HPD, if you apply and they ask you, have you smoked weed within a year? Well, I did maybe like a year and a half ago. That's not a year, but they still disqualified him because he said about a year and a half ago.
All right, so here's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Are you of the position that not only just law enforcement agencies, but just businesses in general hire who they want?
Of course. I mean, number one, Texas is an 8-wheel state.
Okay.
They can hire, fire, do what they want to, and there's nothing really that Department of Labor statistics or nothing that really set in stone that says they can't, because that's a privilege to have being able to
Right.
state. In my opinion, I feel like that it's discriminative because I think people use it as an excuse, like the situation you deal with, just because I can. And I feel like it's discriminative, and I think it hurts people, especially hard working class people who are just trying to make ends meet, just trying to do their job. And for someone to say, no, I don't like what you had on today, I want to fire you. Pretty much that's the best they can say. And if you ask for a rebuttal, it's just how I feel. You know, I'm the boss, I do what I want. So I feel like when it comes to that aspect, there's not enough system of checks and balances in place to make sure that people aren't being retaliated against.
Even with all the laws on the books, and nobody knows all the laws on the books, I've been told that you can't drive 3 blocks without breaking somebody's law.
That's true.
You know, with all of that, we still do not have the quintessential laws to protect workers.
That's correct. And it's, again, I mean, just look what happened the other day. The president, the commissioner for the labor and statistics announced real stats, the facts about how many jobs were accumulated in the past month, and he fired her.
Yeah.
Because she told the truth. So again, if this is supposed to be the leader of the free world, even though he has 34 felonies, but this is the leader of the free world, and we're supposed to be following his lead as the leader of our country, our nation. You know, it's like at the end of the day, and I'll say this, and I can openly admit that my views are very liberal, but at the end of the day, because he is a president of the United States, and I am a veteran that served in the United States Navy in the United States, I'm a citizen of the United States, no one should ever want our leader to not be successful. And I would plainly say that. But at the same time, whenever your leader is doing things that are unsuccessful, or doing things that are considered bigotry, or it hurts the people, not just black people, but it hurts the people as a whole. Because I think people fail to realize this stuff with Medicaid and Social Security, it doesn't just affect black people. It affects white people. It affects everyone. So we have to stop looking so much always when it comes to the federal, especially the federal government, because the federal government, we're not supposed to be biased. We're supposed to do what's good for the American people within the Constitution and within what's right to protect our people.
Okay.
And you know, states and municipalities, you know, they can have their say about, you know, biasness or things like that. But at the federal level, that's supposed to be the one area of government that we can trust to always stick to the script. That if this is what the Constitution says, we know for a fact that's what they're going to do. And right now, we cannot trust as a people, as Americans, that that's what's going to happen, and that's what is happening right now.
Okay. So in terms of Houston, because we're right here in Houston, there was a protest at an ICE center. What was it, Sunday? Your thoughts?
I would say this, you know, and I had a meeting maybe a week and a half ago with an organization, with a group, with the mayor and the police chief, Chief Noah Diaz. And one thing I was very happy to hear about was about the process of how to deal with ICE stuff and things like that. You know, at the end of the day, you know, our police officers are not babysitters. You know, they don't have time. We got too much crime going on within 600.
There's a lot of crime.
Right. We got too much crime going on within 671 square miles to wait for ICE to decide an hour and a half later after the patrol unit's been sitting there. Okay, we're gonna come get them. It's gonna take us 20 minutes. So, you know, at the end of the day, the law enforcement's job in Houston are to enforce state laws and enforce our ordinances here locally. What they're not supposed to be doing is being federal agents and enforcing federal law and federal mandates. A mandate is not a law. It's just a policy that they're wanting you to enforce. So I do say I want to commend our police department because they are following the law. You know, they do what they're supposed to do. They do, if, you know, if a person doesn't have ID or they don't have any, they do put their name in the CIC system to see, you know, who they are to identify them. If they do have an ICE hold, they do notify them and let them know which the law, you know, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But at the same time, if it takes you 30 or 40 minutes to get here, hey, catch them next time. You know, it's catch and release. So I agree with that. As far as the protests, you know, I want to say I feel like it's important that we do protest. I think it's important. Right now, the things that are going on, you know, the president said we're going to just get the bad actors. Now you're taking just whoever you come across. Okay. You're taking hardworking people. You're taking people.
And there were some like actual American citizens that were deported. Like, how does something like that happen on the federal level? I know you got to run them in NICS. I know you got to run them through whatever you got to run them through. How does a guy end up in a Venezuelan prison? I
mean, again, you have to look at the narrative that administration is trying to point. And also have to look at, if I can do it once, I can do it again. Okay. So what happens whenever, you know, what happens whenever we got a president that says, no, I'm going to pass an executive order or a law that if anybody that's an American citizen commits a heinous crime, like sexual assault or sex trafficking or murder, I'm going to deport you.
Is that legal?
No. I mean, if you are an American citizen, you're an American citizen.
Correct.
And not only that, even for other member states, and I say member states, I did a lot of work in the United Nations, other countries or nations to accept these citizens is even wrong on their part. Because, again, what are the terms that are being met? You know, how is this being done? So are our tax dollars paying for them to be kept in custody in your country? That's what they ask this question. Where's this money? Is that because you ain't taking them, you're not taking them for free, right? But release some of the cartel people to go help run the government over there to keep these people in power. Like, you have to really look at what are the backdoor doors being cut for these agreements to be made, because these agreements aren't being made easy, especially with countries like Venezuela and El Salvador. You know, Venezuela is. I mean, let's look at their whole government is ran by a tyrant. You know, so we have to look at, so how are we making friends with these people who are brutal to their own people to take on people from here? Okay. Or how are we deporting people from Mexico or from Honduras and dropping them off in Sudan?
Like,
where was they even
what was the thought process of that? I mean, if you want to send them back to Honduras or, you know, their native country, that's fine.
Well, their thing was these people were the worst of the worst. I'm like, I get it.
What are the metrics for the worst?
Exactly. Because if that's the case, then half your administration need to be flying out with them. But that's a whole other story. That's another story. But that's just, again, it shows you the narrative of what's going on right now in real time and how important it is for people to really wake up and realize, you know, the whole thing before you look. I look at Florida. Look at Governor DeSantis. You know, we have to get rid of this woke movement. Yeah, you guys are trying to get rid of this woke movement because you don't want people to be awakened to what's really happening. You don't want people to be understanding and realize the detrimental harm that's being done, not just now, but 50 years from now. What's going on now is going to affect us now. I'll be dead and gone, and people will look back at this and look at our conversation like, man, they were trying to tell us. And we were still too busy on TikTok. We were still busy on Instagram. We were too busy tweeting and liking stuff to realize that I need to stop being a keyboard pirate or pilot and actually get out here and be on the streets. I need to actually attend these meetings. I need to actually be in these places where I can have a seat to have my voice heard, even if I'm not just speaking for myself, but be a voice for the voiceless instead of being, again, a person that's on the menu.
I appreciate you very much, Mr. Nicholas Little. I really do. It is an absolute pleasure to have this time to speak with you. I only seen you in passing behind the camera, but for you to be here right now is like a superstar moment for me. I really appreciate that.
I'm just like I tell people, I tell people all the time, it's important to, you know, be a public servant. You know, and I've been volunteering and serving in whatever community I lived in since I was 15 years old. Okay. My grandfather was a 50-year vice president for the NAACP in my community, so it's in my blood to serve. And I just want to make the point, you know, people forget, you know, even though the NAACP was started as the Niagara Movement in 1909, and when you look at the acronym, it's about the words, it says the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. In 2025, colored people who are being treated unfairly is not just black people, minorities anymore, it's white people too. Yeah, it is. So we have to realize that, you know, even with our organization name being that, it's for everybody. Yeah. You know, when I went to convention this year, there wasn't just black people there. I saw Asian people, I saw white people coming to the mic
It's
when we passed our
more than
resolution.
something totally different.
Yeah, it's inclusive, and I think that when people understand that the narrative that's going on at the federal level is requiring everybody to get boots on the ground, not just certain people. You know, a lot of people make the argument with the Latino community, like, no, now that you guys are in trouble, now y'all want the black people to come rescue y'all, and I get it, I see it. But you know, I serve in the Houston Greater Coalition, the Greater Houston Coalition of Justice. I work with a lot of members and partners of LULAC. That supports the Latino and Latin American and Hispanic community. So, you know, it's bigger than that now.
Yeah.
It's bigger than color. We are all under attack. All of us.
Yeah.
And I want people to understand the importance and realize that it takes all of us coming together to protect our democracy, protect our rights, and even the people who may not be here legally, to ensure that the process is done properly, to make sure they get it done properly, to make sure that if they are here for the right reasons, to build their family and to just be a hard-working American just like other Americans, let's make a way for them constructively to do it without doing this asinine, inhumane thing that we're doing now. This alligator Alcatraz, which I don't even know how. First of all, the name of it itself just sounds like a joke. But again, it's a mess. But I'm always just preaching a message that even though there's a lot of division, diversity is so important. No matter how much they try to take away DEI, it's so important, and it's a part of all of us. We all have something to bring to the table, but we all have to bring to the table to bring it together.
Understood. Well, this is VEDA World News. My name is Michael Thurber, sociologist and photojournalist, and I'm here today with Nicholas Little, NAACP, law enforcement, community liaison, a man of many talents, wears many hats, but he's definitely here to serve. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.